Hello and a very good evening to you from wherever you're watching. We're live on the air and online as well. This is KTN Prime, the day's latest news, business and sport. Let's take a look at what's coming up in the program.
Some people are testing our resolve. Somebody is testing our resilience.
CORD challenges new Security Laws Amendment Act in court.
And after due consultations and wide consultations, this board has come up today to unveil the candidate for Homa Bay County senatorial position.
It is with humility that I accept the ODM nomination for the Homa Bay senatorial seat.
Other aspirants unhappy as Moses Kajwang gets direct nomination for Homa Bay senator's seat. Guilty as charged. British company directors accused of bribing Kenyan election officials convicted.
Disemba mwaka hii tukikompea na hiyo Disemba zingine, hii imekuwa Disemba moja wasi because watu waendi. Tukikompea hiyo Disemba zingine, saa kama hiyo huwezi pata magari hapa ingekuwa empty. Lakini sasa unaona magari bado ziko wazi.
And why PSV operators are not happy this Christmas season. Once again, welcome to KTN Prime. I'm Nancy Kachingira. William Silla is our sign language interpreter. Now, directors of British-based company Smith & Osman have been found guilty of bribing public officials in Kenya. A 12-member jury found that Chris and Nicholas Smith bribed electoral officials as well as officers from the examination body KNEC so as to be awarded printing contracts. And as KTN's Asha Mula reports, this conviction could just have opened Pandora's box once again in Kenya.
Smith & Usman is known worldwide as the trusted name in security print and multimedia solutions.
If Smith & Usman Company boasted of having integrity, then the British legal system has just burst that bubble. Two directors of the UK-based printing company have been found guilty of fraud. The Smith & Usman pair were convicted at Southwark Crown Court by a 12-member jury, which found that fraudulent payments totaling to 70 million shillings were paid to officials in Ghana, Kenya, Mauritania, and Somaliland. The court heard how the company allegedly bribed electoral officials from the Interim Independent Electoral Commission, as well as the Kenya National Examination Council, NEC. The UK's Serious Fraud Office, which investigated the case, showed evidence in court, including this email sent to Chris Smith from the company's middleman in Kenya, Trevi Oyombra. After meeting a public official, Trevi told Chris, "He's a nice guy, Smith. He is in my pockets now. Let's use them to get the contract, and as I promised, we get the order, he gets the chicken." In the emails, Trevi continues, "Smith, these people's problem is chicken after the award. And I told them, as long as we get the tender, we give them the chicken." The emails were dated back to December 2008 and are said to have been in reference to a contract that the company was chasing in Kenya. In our earlier interview with IEBC former CEO James Oswago, he dismissed the claims that Trevi the middleman dished out bribes to electoral officials, including himself.
Trevi is paid on commission. I wouldn't be surprised if Trevi would say pay more, because the more you pay, the more he gets.
But the British prosecution preempted this argument and told the court that if the commission payments were to be retained by Trevi, then he did very well in the 18 months of those transactions.
Asha, this is what the prosecution is saying. Why don't we wait until the trial is over? Supposing all these things are dismissed during the trial, are nothing but just allegations. This is what the prosecution is saying.
With the trial as good as done, the two convicted businessmen are set to receive their sentence on February 12th. Back in Kenya, however, this is just the beginning. Confirming that it has followed the UK's proceedings, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission says that it sent a team to sit in during the court hearings. EACC spokesperson told KTN that through mutual legal assistance, the commission will now pursue the suspects locally. The commission also says that Trevio Yombra's accounts have already been frozen.
If you can show in this procurement thing that James Oswago, forget about receiving, actually asked for this, take me to court.
David Green, the director of the Serious Fraud Office, said that this was the agency's first conviction of a corporate for offences of bribery. He also had a special mention for Kenyan authorities who he said assisted in the case. But as the UK case comes to a close, back home, Kenyans can only wait to see if any case will be opened at all. Asha Mwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
Those developments from the UK courts already causing ripples back here in Kenya. Let's go to a local court now. The Coalition for Reforms and Democracy, CORD, has moved to court over the new security laws. CORD, through its lawyers, is challenging the constitutionality of the security laws which were passed amid chaotic scenes in Parliament and assented to by President Uhuru Kenyatta last week.
Less than a week after President Uhuru Kenyatta signed into law new security legislation, the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy made good on its word to challenge the new laws in court. Court's top leadership, led by CORD principal Raila Odinga, was in court as the coalition filed its petition before Justice Isaac Lenaola at the Milimani Law Courts. Through lawyers, among them James Orengo, Amos Wako and Anthony Oluoch, the coalition is challenging the constitutionality and validity of the new security laws.
My Lord, with this petition is filed a notice of motion.
CORD terms the laws as oppressive, invalid and inconsistent with the Constitution. It also argues that the enactment of the laws did not follow proper parliamentary procedure.
I hereby certify.
Justice Isaac Lenaola certified the matter as urgent. CORD says it will embark on a countrywide program to educate Kenyans on the meaning and impact of the new security laws.
Some people are testing our resolve. Somebody is testing our resilience. Jubilee is testing our willingness to return to the trenches and fight again for what we believe in and what we hold dear.
The matter will be heard Wednesday morning. Another petition filed by the Kenya Human Rights Commission will also be heard on Wednesday. Elders from Mount Kenya have also faulted the new laws and provisions seen to curtail freedom of the media. They were speaking after conducting prayers for peace and security during the festive season. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Now, the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, has given Moses Kajwang a direct nomination to vie for the Homa Bay senatorial seat. According to ODM's chairperson of the National Election Board, Judy Pereno, the board will issue a certificate to Kajwang following the aborted delegates meeting last week. Moses Kajwang, who is a brother to the late Homa Bay Senator Otieno Kajwang, has embraced his nomination and called for party unity.
I want to thank all our candidates, the 7 of them. They have behaved so well. They have been our friends. They have been pleasant, very committed and loyal members of this party. But I want to say that all of them could not fit into one position. We had to make a very hard decision out of the best because we had the best of all. And we want to say thank you for coming out to be our candidates for this senatorial by-election. And after due consultations and wide consultations, this board has come up today to unveil the candidate for Homa Bay County senatorial position, and it is none other than Moses Otieno Kajwang. And we are glad to say that we have done our best in the circumstances that exist.
It is with humility that I accept the ODM nomination for the Homa Bay senatorial seat. I respect the wisdom of the party and its leadership, and hereby promise the party and all our party followers a great victory in the by-elections that will be coming up on the 12th of February. My nomination for the Homa Bay Senate seat is a confirmation to the youth of this nation that the ODM party and the CORD coalition puts first and forth the interests of young people in this country.
Now, just hours after the direct nomination of Moses Kajwang, one of the other aspirants for that Homa Bay seat, that is Silas Jakakimba, actually tendered his resignation from the party. And we're going to speak to him right now via phone link and find out why exactly. Silas, thank you for joining us this evening. Why have you decided to resign from ODM?
Thank you. One, I'm a great believer in true principles of democracy. And I've been a member of the family, the so-called change movement in this country. But it's my opinion that the party might not have explored all the options to allow democracy to prevail in this process. And somebody who has a track record in standing for democratic ideals, the social democracy ideals that the change movement propagates in this country. But for one, I decided to get out of the box and ask myself very tough questions as to whether the party I've toiled for all these years still believes in the principles that I've so much put my efforts in propagating.
So was your resignation directly as a result of this direct nomination of Moses Kajwang?
My resignation has more to do with my belief that the party might not have subscribed to democratic ideals, at least in this process, at the end of it. Okay. And these are things that I so personally believe about.
Right. Well, Judy Pereno, who is the National Elections Board Chair, said that this win for Kajwang was unanimous and informed by scientific survey. Do you agree that this direct nomination was the best way to go?
Well, I know as a party member that the party has various options for having as a candidate. That said, I still believe as a member of the change movement that it turned out to me like we were working on a script which was predetermined. And even coming to the scientific survey you mentioned, I remember asking a question when they met us a few days ago. Who was going to nominate these teams? They talked about 3 surveys. And when did they carry out these surveys? Because the ground is different. And they know this so well. So I think that the purported scientific survey is just a major PR gimmick for the public. It's not grounded on any fact.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us this evening, Silas Jakakimba, and giving us your side of that story. That was Homa Bay seat aspirant Silas Jakakimba, who has now tendered his resignation from the ODM party, and he did this just hours after Moses Kajwang received a direct nomination to vie for that seat. Now, as we move on, property owners and developers from Nairobi's Makongeni area are now appealing to the Nairobi County and national government not to demolish their buildings without fair consideration. This week, Sunday, Nairobi Governor Dr. Evans Kidero formed a team to probe and audit the safety of buildings in the county. The developers from Makongeni say that the incident where a building collapsed last week on Wednesday was a serious tragedy and wanted to be treated as an isolated case.
With a notice from the county government of Nairobi. Kwa hivyo tungetaka kabla ubomoaji wote ifanywe sehemu hii, tunataka watu wakae chini wakubaliane, tuone mali kuna makosa rekebishwe ili watu wote wasidhulumiwe kwa sababu ya mjengo moja.
Amidst the tragedy which has been attributed to poor standard of the building, that was an isolated case and should not create an impression that all buildings in Makongeni and Kaloleni ward are poorly built.
Now, many parents have been hoping that next year will be a little easier in terms of school fees, but right now the National Parents Association has demanded an explanation from the Education Cabinet Secretary, Professor Jacob Kaimenyi, on a new directive on secondary school fees for next year. Now, as KTN's Edith Kimani reports, the Parents Association is angry at what they call plans to use an old fees structure that could deny each student up to 13,000 shillings in government subsidy.
A lot of documents that we would read.
It may be a festive season, but the Kenya National Association of Parents is in anything but a celebratory mood. The parents group wants Education Cabinet Secretary Professor Jacob Kaimenyi out, and this is why.
It is so sad to note, as we sit here today, I want to tell Kenyans that the Minister of Education does not have a legal policy document to guide operations of the sector. The so-called sessional paper number 14 of 2020 on reforming education and training sector in Kenya is an illegal document.
The circular Ndunda is referring to is a 2013 document that states each secondary school student is entitled to 10,265 shillings subsidy from government every year to cater for teaching and learning materials, related operational costs, and lunch for students in public schools. Ndunda and his team want the government to instead adopt recommendations by a secondary school task force instituted by the president. The task force suggests that every student be entitled to 23,975 shillings per year, a sum that would see school fees decreased by just over 13,000 shillings a year for secondary school students. The parents say theirs is a simple demand.
We would want our Excellence, President and the Deputy President, to take charge of the ministry. We want them to save Kenyan parents. We want them to save Kenyans. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it is so shocking that when I look at the circular of Kaimenyi, which is saying, listen, you know, it looks queer. When he's saying that please maintain the fee structures that were there in 2013. We didn't have fee structures.
That's not all, however.
No school. The issue of KCSE and KCP exam fees will not be charged in public schools. It is unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen, that I want to read to you some schools that have already fixed, because you see, our minister is not in touch with Kenyans. He's not, I think it's very serious.
The demands by the parents now go into Kaimenyi's to-do list. On this list is the Kenya National Union of Teachers' demands for salary increase and teacher recruitment before schools reopen in January. The teachers have already issued a strike threat, which, coupled with the parents' demands for lower school fees, means it may not be such a Merry Christmas for the Professor of Education. Edith Kimani, KTN.
Now, as many Kenyans prepare themselves for the much-anticipated Christmas Day, matatu operators, on the other hand, in Nairobi especially, are saying that they're disappointed. The PSV operators claim that there aren't as many people traveling up country as they usually see during this time of the year. Philip KTN tells us more.
Public service vehicle providers are projecting an estimated 30% drop in customers this season as compared to other years when these bus terminals will now be full of travelers heading up country.
December mwaka hii tukikompare na hiyo December zingine, hii imekuwa December moja wasi because watu waendi. Tukikompare hiyo December zingine, saa kama hiyo huwezi pata magari hapa ingekuwa empty. Lakini sasa unaona magari bado ziko na ziko wazi.
However, a further spot check by KTN at booking offices for buses plying Western Kenya route reveals that there are limited spaces for those traveling to Kakamega, Kisumu, Migori, Mumias, Bungoma, Busia and Eldoret on easy coach and shuttles.
Hapa tulikuwa tumekuja kubook gari ya kwenda Busia na kwa bahati mbaya jioni kukuta gari imetuacha, tukaweza kulala hapa mpaka asubuhi. Za shida ni kwamba magari ziko, watu ni wengi ambao wanasafiri, na kusema kweli ukichelewa hapa ni kuna hatari zake kwa sababu utabidi uongeze nauli tena nusu.
Meanwhile, 8 and 10-seater private vehicles are also providing services to up-country destination at slightly lower rates, with the owners keen on raking huge profits before the end of the festive season.
Inabidi mkongo asafiri kwa sababu sasa atalala na mizigo za Christmas huku.
This reduction has also directly affected the fares, with only slight increases noted in comparison to almost 150% fare hikes witnessed in the past years. Passengers traveling to Kisumu and Kakamega with Easy Coach are parting with 1,500 shillings, which is an increase of 300 shillings.
Bei hatujaweka juu sana, bei iko sawa. Bei tumeweka 1,000 kwenda mbele, lakini hatujaweka 2,000. Hizo tembe zingine sio beba 2,000. Hapa kuna gari imebeba 2,000. Bei iko sawa.
Those heading to Mombasa aboard Coast Bus and Mash buses are paying an estimated 350 shillings more, with a current cost ranging between 1,800 and 2,400 shillings, depending on the type of bus. Philip Ketan, KTN.
Now, the Ministry of Roads and Infrastructure is spending quite a bit of money, at least 142 million shillings every month, to repair roads, to remove illegal structures and install visible signs. The Principal Secretary for Infrastructure says that motorists should be extra vigilant this festive season and make sure they obey road signs or they will face heavy fines.
2 days to Christmas, and officials at the Ministry of Roads and Infrastructure say that they have been working round the clock to give major roads a facelift ahead of the festive season.
Now, the other issue is the road safety. We have signs which we have put along our highways. So, especially during this season for Christmas, we are urging the motorists to make sure that they observe the limits which we have put in the designated in our highways. And apart from that, what we are going to do is to remove all the illegal structures which are obstructing the motorists. And marking of highways, we are going to enhance. I think, again, we must have seen in due course part of the contract which we awarded to make sure that we mark all the highways, and including separate crossings, and construct also standard rumble strips and road pumps where it is absolutely necessary to do so.
So motorists caught speeding will not have an excuse that they did not see the signs. Speeding is one of the main causes of road carnage in Kenya.
Now, the other issue is the illegal speed bumps. You have seen people putting up or erecting actually illegal speed bumps. Notwithstanding that, we have now liaised with the counties to make sure this one is not done. And again, we have the standards in which if you have to construct these pumps, they are designated kind of standards in which you can be able to follow.
In the meantime, the government intends to build 10,000 kilometers of road by 2017. The project has been divided into 3 phases. The first, 2,000 kilometers, will be built. The second phase will see 3,000 kilometers built, while the third phase will involve the construction of another 5,000 kilometers. The qualification phase attracted 146 bidders, of which 49 of them were selected to build the first 2,000 kilometers of new roads.
The first 7 lots is we have those roads which have been designed, and those ones are you can easily quote because you have all the design cover information. The second batch of the roads are those ones which have not been designed, and that is the one which again we are opening or we are closing the bids on 6th February. So again, that gives you our schedule in terms of rolling out the network as towards the end of February or mid-February. We are launching the first road.
At the end of the project, the country will have increased the paved road network from 15,000 kilometers to 25,000 kilometers.
Now, you may have heard that the government can now borrow up to 2.5 trillion shillings from external parties after Parliament raised the debt ceiling from 1.2 trillion shillings. But just what does this mean, and what will the impact of this be? Adelaide Changole breaks down the numbers for us.
For every 100 shillings you pay in taxes today, about 3 shillings goes towards paying off debts and interest accrued on the 1.05 trillion shillings loans owed to external parties by the state. But this figure could rise significantly now that Parliament has more than doubled the country's external debt ceiling from 1.2 trillion shillings to 2.5 trillion shillings. Parliament approved the request from Treasury, ostensibly to give the state headroom to procure the finances needed to actualize its key infrastructure projects, which include the standard gauge railway, the Lapsset transport corridor, and the road expansion works, all of which need trillions of shillings.
We continue to accumulate external debt, but we wanted to make sure that this cap does not become an hindrance.
And analysts are lauding the move, saying the high debt ceiling will allow the state to bridge the 2 trillion shilling infrastructure gap that exists in the Kenyan economy and allow the country to leapfrog past its neighbors and cement its place as the gateway into East Africa.
We need to improve our railways. We need to do the port at Lapsat. We want to be the, if you think of it like a transit state, we want everyone to pass through us. So I think there's general consensus around the plan.
Moreover, it will allow the government to borrow long-term debt at lower interest rates from the international financial markets while reducing its reliance on debt from the local market. And without the crowding out effect brought about by the government, the local interest rates should fall, which would be a boon to local businesses.
The more government stays out of domestic markets, you relieve pressure of interest rates and allow, you don't crowd out private investment.
But the new ceiling raises a critical concern about the debt levels. According to the International Monetary Fund, emerging and developing countries like Kenya should maintain debt at 40% of GDP. And while the rebasing of the economy shrunk the debt from 56 to 46% of GDP, it is still above the IMF rate and is likely to rise.
I think it's going to be tough to keep it down to 40. I think, over the next 2 or 3 years, we are going to be loading the balance sheet, and therefore I think it ticks higher, somewhere towards 60% potentially, before it starts coming down again.
More worryingly, according to the Exchequer report published by the National Treasury in September, the state overshot its budget for non-concessional commercial financing in the first 3 months of the fiscal year by a whopping 183%, borrowing 103.2 billion shillings against a full-year target of 36.43 billion shillings. Ironically, the state only borrowed 5.13 billion shillings from concessional sources against a target of 36 billion shillings.
We are taking on more expensive debt instruments, debt instruments which require to be paid immediately. At least there is no grace period for non-concessional loans. And that puts pressure both on government to raise revenue today, but also on the debt portfolio.
And this concern magnifies given the spate of borrowings already underway. In a submission before Parliament, Treasury Secretary Henry Rotich said the government had been assured of loans totaling more than $10 billion over the next 4 years. The state has also reopened the $2 billion Eurobond to raise an additional $750 million and plans to issue a Sharia-compliant Sukuk bond and a diaspora bond over the coming years. And now some analysts are questioning the sustainability of this new borrowing regime.
We are mortgaging our future, right? We are. This is a fact. We are borrowing money from people all over the world. If you look at who bought the Eurobond, North America 66%, the UK, so we're borrowing money from these guys, and we're essentially giving them a kind of mortgage on our assets.
The government needs to clearly define for us the kind of debt management strategy that they are taking on.
However, the government insists the debt levels, even with a higher debt ceiling, are sustainable.
At the moment, our debt to GDP is well below 50%, and indeed, going over the medium term, based on the way that we see the fiscal framework, our fiscal policy developing over the next 3, 4, 5 years, we actually expect that debt stock in relation to GDP to decline over the next few years.
But Ali Kansachu says the concern should not be the debt to GDP levels, but rather how the funds being borrowed are utilized. And this, he says, is where the devil lies.
We're going to leverage our balance sheets. We've got to make sure we're investing and not just consuming or spending the money on salaries. I think that's the key issue.
Kenya's total external debt stock stands at 1.045 trillion shillings, representing 22% of the country's 4.757 trillion shilling economy. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.
Oh, there you have it. The good, the bad, and the uncertain of the new debt ceiling. Now to some not-so-sweet news from Mumia's Sugar Company. Their credit rating has been downgraded for the 3rd time since 2012, reflecting the firm's worsening financial position. Global Credit Ratings, which is licensed by the Capital Markets Authority to evaluate the financial strength of companies listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, downgraded the troubled sugar miller's long-term credit rating to BBB, just 1 1 year after it was downgraded from A+ to A. The firm has been through a rough patch due to financial strains and issues of corporate governance that GCR said were likely to further impact Mumias's credit rating. Mumias has been struggling to service its massive debts, forcing it to sit with 7 banks to restructure its loans just to ease the repayment burden. A poor rating also means the company borrows at a stiffer interest rate, a fact that is likely to be damaging to Mumias. The miller is the largest sugar producer in Kenya, accounting for 28% of domestic production. That is, however, down from previous 40% market share. And the Lake Turkana wind power project, in some more positive news, has been nominated for the African Renewable Deal of the Year 2014 by Thomson Reuters Project Finance International. A report on the wind power plant by the Finance Intelligence Service firm commended the project's arrangers for securing the massive funding required to complete what will be the largest wind plant in Africa. The wind firm raised 70 billion shillings, the largest ever private sector financing in Kenya, with the deal including 10 European and African development finance institutions, 2 commercial banks, 2 hedging banks, 5 main contractors, and 3 government counterparties. The last round of funding for the project, that is expected to produce 310 megawatts once completed in 2017, was completed this month after an 8-year process. The project also broke the record for the single largest sales order for wind turbines by a Copenhagen firm. Vestas, a Danish firm, said that the 365 turbines needed for the project are the biggest order in the firm's 69-year history. It's estimated that the project will save the country 17 billion shillings every year due to reduced importation of fuel used in thermal power plants. Mwamba Rugby Football Club, in conjunction with the Centre for Multi-Party Democracy, have partnered to run the Mwamba RFC Under-16 Academy. The Mwamba RFC Under-16 has been running for over 5 years with an aim to discover and nurture rugby talent at a tender age. Running a sports academy alongside a main club is certainly not an easy task, and the Mwamba Club management got an early Christmas gift after the Centre for Multi-Party Democracy unveiled a 2-year sponsorship. The sponsorship will run for the 2014-2015 season, and over 35 boys are expected to benefit. CMD will supply the academy with playing equipment and kits, while also offering financial support. And in an effort to fight insecurity and create employment for coastal youth, soccer academies are taking root in the county. Samba Foundation, that began 2 years ago, now has over 50 youth under it, and plans are underway to spread the goodwill to neighboring counties.
Slums have always been synonymous to all sorts of evil in the world. However, there's something to smile about in Mombasa as they take a lead in changing the security scenario in the county. For the last 3 years, Mombasa has been in the headlines for insecurity and drug abuse. A vice that seems buried into the coastal youth for ages. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Mombasa-based Samba Football Talent Academy has emerged as one of the top Kenyan academies devoted to offering the sport a positive lifeline out of what it terms an employment spiral of despair. The academy has helped hundreds of children from poor backgrounds to become more confident to speak to people and showcase their talents, not only in football but also in theater.
Tunajua kwamba talanta zimetoka slums, kama wachezaji wetu maarufu kama kina Dennis Oliech, kina Mariga, wote wametoka background yenyewe walikuwa wanajiweza. Kwa sababu mimi tumeshika watoto na hii age pale tuko wanaingilia miadarati, wanaanza kuwa na watoto wabaya, wanaanza kuvuta bangi. Sasa tulisema ni sisi kama Samba Foundation, sisi kama vijana tunaweza nini juu sisi pia ni vijana na tunaweza saidiaje vijana wenzetu pia wajiepushe kwa mambo kama haya.
Tulikaa chini na mwenzangu na vijana wenzangu
tukasema tutafute mbinu ile tunaweza fanya tuwasaidie hawa vijana. Na hawa vijana si ati wamekosa mwelekeo, hawana tu mtu wa kuongoza na hawana platform.
Foundation's coach Mohamed Kai is elated by the project and hopes this will change the youth's mindsets.
Miaka mingi sana nimekuwa nikiotea vitu kama hivi vitokee. So naweza sema ni shukrani sana kwanza kwa this Samba Foundation kwa sababu imeleta mwamko mkubwa katika mtaa wetu na kuhamasisha especially young girls na boys kutoka katika mitaa.
The Talent Academy has under 12, under 14 and under 17 categories and also nurtures a special under 15 category for girls. Hassan Juma.
Well, let's end this by taking a look at your feedback this evening to our big Q. We asked you whether you support CORD's court petition against the Security Law Amendment Act. Let's take a look at the poll results right now. They should be coming up on your screen. And we've got just over 70%, 71% saying yes and 29% saying no. Thank you for your feedback. Let's take a look at some SMSs first. Ali from Garissa says, yes, I do support court petition because the bill is against humanity and I therefore oppose it fully. And another one here that says, no, court members are nihilists. When terrorists kill, they take advantage of the funerals to undermine the government. And another one here says, the laws are against human rights as enshrined in the Constitution. This is from Nyamai Kamula in Machakos town. Thank you very much for your feedback. There is a yes here. Says the whole process was flawed and cooked to succeed. It is not accepted by all Kenyans. This is Ken in Nairobi. Thank you for your feedback. And let's take a look at a few tweets here. This one from Jack Cassipol. He says, yes, if left unchallenged, the Jubilee government seems to be taking the country back to the dark days of oppression. And one more tweet here from Mwadhi Thuo says, no, I don't support them. Let them help the government fight insecurity instead of playing the blame game. Well, those are your opinions. Thank you very much for sharing them with us this evening. That was KTN Prime for this Tuesday. I'm Nancy Kachingira. It was a great pleasure to have you joining me. William Silla, was our sign language interpreter. Do have a very good night and a great day. Looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow.